Hey everyone, Ronan here. Welcome back to the channel. I want to welcome you to the first episode of Season 2 of What If Ash and Paul Travel to Unova. But before we get into today's episode, if you haven't already, go check out the full story, which I'll link in the iCard above, to make sure you're caught up on the entire series. And I'm going to need you to take a look at this analytical stat bar right here. If you notice, some of you guys that watch the channel aren't subscribed. So it would be greatly appreciated if you would turn on notifications, hit the subscribe button, so you'll never miss another upload. But with all that being said, let's get into Season 2, Part 1 of What If Ash and Paul Travel to Unova. I hope you enjoy. With their arrival in Litmus Town, Paul and Iris are now in uncharted territory. 1, they don't have Ash, and 2, they really have no idea where they are to go. Paul only has one thought: something is calling him to Reversal Mountain. Figuring the Pokemon Center would be their best bet as a place to start, Iris makes the suggestions they head there, which Paul agrees. Upon arrival, the Pokemon Center of this deceptively sleepy town is overrun with residents and trainers that have been traveling the area. Iris and Paul watch the chaos the center is enveloped in. The two begin to ask around about what is happening, getting little to no response or answers from the trainers, grieving at the bedside of Pokemon that have been set up in common areas due to the overcapacity of the hospital. Letting her emotions take over, Iris begins to help in any way she can, giving assistance to anyone who asks, while Paul, being a little bit more level-headed, searches for the proprietor of the establishment, Nurse Joy. It takes some time, but he eventually finds her, treating a Machino that has appeared to be in some sort of extreme battle. Pieces of its fur and skin are missing, like they were melted away. Paul begins to inquire about what's happening, only for Nurse Joy to ask if he can take a seat here, and Autono will look at his Pokemon as soon as they can. Seeing the futility in his effort, Paul chooses not to draw the attention of Nurse Joy, as she needs to focus on the task at hand. He then seeks out Iris, who he finds under the instructions of Autono, as they care for the panic-driven patients. Paul can do nothing but watch, pondering his next move, as he seeks answers. Luckily, he doesn't have to wait long, as this town's only Officer Jenny has come by the center to bring yet another trainer that has a Pokemon in critical condition. As she isn't a healthcare provider, Jenny can't really help here. However, this offers a vital moment for Paul as he questions her on what's been happening here. Officer Jenny informs Paul that all of these trainers have attempted to take the only path that leads from town that just so happens to traverse through Reversal Mountain. Normally, it isn't an issue, but within the last few days, the once dormant volcano has become active, and the Pokemon in the area are becoming more aggressive due to the increased danger to their natural habitats. This has resulted in many trainers that have landed here by plane, or any that were just stopping here to become trapped until the next flight out. I see, Paul says. Well, me and a friend are planning on heading up the mountain anyway, so we can check it out to see if there's anything abnormal happening up there. I'm sorry, Jenny says. Due to the high risk of injury, I've closed the path to Reversal Mountain for the time being. I'm afraid you are stuck here until further notice. Jenny then excuses herself, as she needs to secure the path out of Litmus Town. Paul says nothing, only looking out a window to the towering rock formation. Every fiber in his being is telling him that he needs to go there, and nothing is going to stop him. Later that night, after things in the center have calmed down, Paul and Iris are talking about what is happening in the town. Iris says it's strange what's happening here. All these hurt Pokemon, the town being locked down. Paul says he couldn't agree more. He finds it odd that he's been having these visions of Reversal Mountain and these things keep happening. By now, Iris knows Paul, and she asks when he's planning to head up the mountain. Paul tells her after midnight, when everyone is asleep. Great, I'll get ready, our heroine says. However, Paul stops this by telling Iris that he needs her to cover him and distract anyone who starts asking questions. Iris is adamantly against this, protesting this bad idea. But the look on Paul's face says it all. This is something he needs to do, and no one will stand in his way, be it friend or foe. With a sigh, Iris relents, telling Paul to be careful, as she doesn't want to have to save him like she always does. With a mild smirk, Paul tells her don't worry. He's ending this craziness that's been going on in his head tonight. With that, we fade to Paul trekking up the side of Reversal Mountain, being forced to take the hard way as not to alert Officer Jenny. Looking back, Paul takes one last look, almost to say goodbye, and makes his way up the towering monolith. It takes some time, but Paul is able to make his way into a cave that is on the face of a steep cliff. Once safely in the opening, Paul notices something. He was expecting heat due to the injuries of all the Pokemon at the center, but what he finds is the exact opposite. It's cold, almost like ice. Paul knows immediately that whatever is going on, nature is not at the center of this like he's being told. So, he sends in Embor to provide some much-needed light in the void of nothing. Telling his combat pig they need to move, the two dart off into the dark, unsure of what awaits them at the other end. Back at the center, Officer Jenny and Nurse Joy are making their rounds, checking the patients of the hospital. They are making sure everyone is accounted for. This is where Iris runs interference, distracting the two the best she can. Though she is successful with Nurse Joy, as she is more trusting, Officer Jenny is another matter. While Iris thinks she's successful upon their parting, Jenny's intuitive nature says she needs to trust, but verify. However, her fear is realized when entering the room of Paul and Iris, only to find Iris sleeping with Axew. Not wanting to sound a panic, Officer Jenny tells her Stoutland they're heading out, but to be quiet. The two protectors of peace bolt off into the night with a sense of fear in Officer Jenny's urgency. Meanwhile, back on the mountain, we pick up with our favorite bumbling trio, Jesse, James, and Meowth. The three look very run down, being driven like slaves, as they talk about Giovanni and his strange obsession with this place. They have been digging in these ruins ever since the boss lost to that brat in Chargestone Cave. James says this obsession is unhealthy, citing his experience with Jezebel and his parents, while Jesse is just over the manual labor. Sure, doing it for a chance of profit is one thing, but chasing ghosts is where she draws the line. However, Meow states they owe everything to the boss, so when he asks them to do something, they should do it. No questions asked. Just as Meowth finishes that sentence, James strikes something with his shovel. Under further inspection, he finds it's a box. Excitingly, James yelps, "I think I've found it," as we pan out to see Giovanni walking toward them, and the sight becomes more clear when we see Team Rocket had been digging in what seems to be the ruins of some sort of shrine, with an altar that depicts three mysterious entities atop of it. Over with Paul, he and Embor have been walking for a good while, far longer than Paul thought they should have been. But things have not gone unnoticed, as Paul says to himself he should have seen some sort of Pokemon by now. Officer Jenny said the local wild ones have been overly aggressive, but nothing, just silence. That is, until a tremor can be felt under his feet. This cave that he is in seems to be close to the epicenter of the shockwave. Realizing the cave is falling in on itself, Paul and Embor dart off, looking for any opening they can find. Over with Officer Jenny, she finds herself on the path looking for the missing boy Paul, but there's no sign of him. Growing frustrated with the situation, Jenny begins to turn back, only to be met with a quake as a sight catches her eye. The top of Reversal Mountain has begun to spew with magma and smoke. Then it dawns on the officer. Paul has headed into the mountain. Knowing her sworn duty, Jenny and Stoutland make their way to the opening of the lava tomb. Back with Team Rocket, Giovanni arrives at the location of James to lay eyes on the prize that he has sought for so long. At last, the boss says. He bends down, laying his grimy fingers on the historic artifact. Giovanni begins to pull the box from the resting place, but is met with resistance. Failing to pull the box up from its burial site, the rocket leader orders James to dig it out. Proceeding with his command, James widens the hole until the box is fully exposed, and once Giovanni pushes his subordinates out of the way as he wedges the box from its prison. Upon freeing the box, a rumble can be felt throughout the Cave of Ruins, as fissures begin to form at the epicenter of the villains. Unshaken, Giovanni opens the box, only for a smile on his face to widen sadistically. This is where a very real problem comes into play, as magma begins to seep from the cracks that have formed in the walls and the floor of the cave. With panic in their voices, the trio urge the boss that they need to go, unless they want to become a permanent fixture in this place lost to time. It's here that Paul emerges from the cave they had been in, only to see the panicking trio and the magma flowing into the cavern slowly. However, before Paul can say anything, the black stone pulsates, showing Paul's images of that mirror that Giovanni is holding, and three Pokemon that Paul feels are familiar, but he has never seen before. This vision is quickly ended as the mirror begins to resonate with the black orb, seemingly awakening Gio from his blissful trance. The two lock eyes, with Giovanni holding a special resentment for this particular trainer, while Paul sees what the former gym leader holds, and knows that whatever it is, Team Rocket can't leave here with it. Being the aggressor on this, Paul sends in Palpitoad, telling it and Ambor to hold off the cronies, while he faces off against their leader with Electivire. The electric Oni hits the field, sparking as Giovanni greets his opponent, with sarcasm in his voice. "Looks like losing wasn't enough for you, was it, boy?" With confidence, Paul tells Giovanni his pathetic attempt at intimidation won't work. The leader is a hack from a bygone era. Face it, old man, you, much like that mirror, are a relic from a world that has been forgotten. It's time you stepped aside and stopped this useless search for power. These comments don't sit well with the boss, electing to forego any banter for a battle as he sends in one of his newest acquisitions, Golurk. The colossal doll slams into the ground with its massive weight, further threatening the stability of the surrounding footing. Paul wastes no time in activating the transformation of Electivire and the Black Orb. Now hulking with power, Paul's ace engages with Golurk as their trainers give commands, holding nothing back. Surprisingly, Electivire seems to be somewhat on the ropes, which is something that Paul notices. Giovanni sees this as well, urging his Pokemon to strike while the iron is hot. With the will of its trainer, Golurk brings its massive arm down in a hammering motion. Paul orders a counter that should be no problem for Electivire, but something is wrong. The Oni seems to be breathing heavily, taking a knee to absorb the blow. Then it happens. The transformation fails as Electivire and the Black Orb separate mid-attack. This pleases Giovanni to no end. He knew this kid was all bluster and no substance. Paul can't understand why this has happened, calling to Electivire, but the Oni is down, and things aren't looking good. The lava is flowing in, and Paul's Pokemon seem to be on the losing end, but then he notices it. The Black Orb and the mirror that Geo holds. They seem to be in harmony with each other. I wonder, Paul thinks. However, he has little time to ponder this thought as another tremor rocks the cave and something bursts through the floor. This stops Golurk's attack on Electivire as a magma storm envelops the cave. Striking all Pokemon in attendance, the legendary Pokemon of lava, Heatran, has made itself known. Come to find out, it's not happy with these humans that have invaded its territory. Using its power, the Magmamon awakens the sleeping giant that is Reversal Mountain. The bubbling cauldron that is the volcano begins to rumble to life as the realization that the cave they are in is actually a magma tube as lava begins to flow slowly, picking up speed. With both of our combatants having self-preservation in their best interests, Geo and Paul give orders to halt the battle. However, Boss Rocket hasn't forgotten the humiliating defeat Paul gave him in Chargestone Cave. And as he escapes, Geo declares Paul will fall to him one day. However, this falls on deaf ears, as Paul has another concern. While Team Rocket was able to escape from the vantage point they had, our anti-hero has to deal with the threat at hand, the enraged Heatran. At this point, it's all hands on deck. Paul beckons his trio of Pokemon to the aid of their trainer. Unfortunately, the Triad are feeling the battle they've had. Electivire most of all. That mirror was very draining with its transformation. However, the three choose to push on, using their natural abilities to create barriers from the heat and lava for their trainer. Unfortunately, this is only a temporary relief, as they are still boxed in with Heatran slowly pushing its way towards them. Paul looks around for any signs of salvation. It is here that he notices a small lava flow that seems to be leaking through the wall. Knowing it's a gamble, Paul orders his Pokemon to stop the defense. It's time to attack. Paul orders Palpitoad to use Hydro Pump on Heatran to push it back. He then turns his attention to the wall behind them. Emboar, Heat Crash, Electivire, Wild Charge. Caution to the wind, the battling duo throw all of their weight into their attacks. Unfortunately, they only manage to cause a crack in this obstruction. Electivire recoils from this, dropping to one knee. Paul knows this is all or nothing. Palpitoad is losing ground, and his other two are at their limits. However, Emboar isn't giving up. Its fighting type showing its competitive spirit. This energizes its teammates, with Electivire pulling itself back up. With one final effort, the two Girthymons throw their weight with all of the elements of energy they have at this wall. Finally, fortune smiles as the wall crumbles, revealing another cave that has a direct line to an exit. Unfortunately, both Emboar and Electivire are spent, as Palpitoad is also at its limits. Recalling his Pokemon, Paul bolts down the tunnel as Heatran fires a Magma Storm. Pushing with all his might, Paul is barely able to clear the cave as the opening erupts from the side of the top of the volcano, spewing boulders into the air, mimicking its master. However, Paul now has another problem as he slides down the side of Reversal Mountain at high speeds. Looking for the out, he is desperate for any type of save. Fortunately, it comes in the form of Officer Jenny and Stoutland as the loyal hound jumps, grabbing Paul by his collar just as he kisses the side of a cliff and his delayed demise. Paul seems unfazed, even at the scolding Officer Jenny gives him as they descend the mountain. He can't shake the feeling. He knows that the orb needs to be returned to the ruins that were in that cave, but the mirror that Giovanni now has in his possession makes him uneasy. Later at the Pokemon Center, after an apology to Jenny and another scolding from Joy for being reckless with his Pokemon, Paul is finally able to relax in his room. However, Iris is the last line of annoyance for him as she gives him the third degree about what happened. Paul decides to tell his unwanted traveling companion about the events that took place, choosing to omit the parts about Electivire's transformation failing and the multiple near-death experiences, so Iris will stop questioning everything. The young Dragon Master's last question is about the orb. She thought Paul was going to the mountain to return it, in which he does confirm. However, with the new development of Team Rocket, Paul feels it's best to take care of them so the orb can be safe once it's returned. Iris can see the logic in this line of thought, so relents her questioning, allowing the now exhausted Paul to finally do the one thing he's been wanting to do since he got back to the center: sleep. Unfortunately, this long-awaited slumber isn't a peaceful one. Paul is shown visions of an ancient war. The beings lay waste to what looks like ancient Unova, a force of lightning, wind, and earth, causing chaos wherever they go. At the center of it is another Pokemon Paul has never seen before, and the mirror that Giovanni has. Just when Paul thinks he's going to finally get some answers, the vision fades as Zekrom cries in what sounds like pain. Waking up in a terror sweat, Paul finds himself in bed with Axew and Iris fast asleep. Looking out the window, Paul can't help but wonder what path he is on, and if Ash is on one similar to it. The next morning, with Team Rocket no longer on the mountain, Jenny has opened up the route out of town since the volcano has become dormant once more. So Iris and Paul set off bound for their next place of adventure. The duo has quite the journey ahead of them. This is shown when the two arrive just outside their next stop, Undella Town. There is a power plant of some sort. Paul and Iris decide to stop and let their Pokemon stretch their legs. However, the power plant attracts the attention of both Electivire and Amoga, as it seems to lose power when a mild explosion happens. Paul wants to just ignore this and move on to Undella Town, but something is calling Iris to this place. She can't put her finger on it, but she knows she needs to be there, and points out to Paul that she took his word for it when he said he had to do something. This triggers the young man to agree to accompany her, much to his displeasure. Fortunately, this adventure isn't one in vain. It turns out that this is a substation, and is unmanned for the most part. What our heroes find inside is a damage that would signal some sort of battle that has been taking place. Luckily, the two don't have to wait long, as they find none other than Jesse, James, and Meowth in the process of trying to catch a Dragonite. However, Giovanni isn't here. It seems that this is one of the trio's harebrained schemes that they think will be worth the effort. This does little to subdue the wrath of Paul, as he sends in Palpitoad to make quick work of the trio. This just leaves Dragonite, who seems very angry with anything that is not a Pokemon, going as far to attack Iris when she tries to get in close. This is where Axew jumps in, trying to stand up for the honor of its trainer, but Dragonite isn't having it. Striking with a Thunder Punch, Axew dodges, forcing Dragonite to hit a power console that gets overcharged and explodes in the process. Dragonite is caught in the blast, swallowed by fire and electricity. In order to reduce the damage possible, Paul orders Palpitoad to use its water and ground typing to fight off any fires that happen. This allows Iris to make her way to Dragonite. Even though the fire rages and it seems to be hurt, Dragonite still has a stubborn streak about it, refusing any help that Iris offers. Even when a piece of roof collapses from the stress of the fire, it still refuses help, glaring at Axew for offering assistance with a Dragon Rage. Unfortunately, this ends in the most obvious result, with Dragonite fainting due to its fatigue. With no other choice or ability to move the fallen dragon, Iris throws a Pokeball, knowing that she can't leave it here. Luckily, there isn't much resistance, with the Pokeball capturing the powerful beast. With little time left, Iris and Paul collect their Pokemon, barely escaping the burning building as the rest of it crumbles under its own weight. Paul wishes he could have gotten more info out of the dim-witted trio, but he's going to have to settle for what's happening now. It's here that Paul urges Iris for them to move on to Undella Town. A few hours later, Paul and Iris find themselves enjoying a meal at the center, awaiting a call to pick up their Pokemon. While Paul is deep in thought about the events of the last week, Iris can't seem to shut up about her excitement of catching a dragon type that is as strong as Dragonite. She finally feels like she's on her way to becoming a Dragon Master. Her relentless babble is edging on Paul's nerves, preventing him from piecing together the mental puzzle he's entranced in. This causes him to snap at Iris, saying she's only caught Dragonite because it couldn't fight back. It's not like she actually battled it and caught it. Team Rocket did most of the work. This strikes Iris. She wasn't expecting an outburst like that from Paul. Normally, he's quiet and reserved. Curious about this behavior, Iris wants to ask if he's alright, but before she can get another word out, Paul stands, telling her that he's going for a walk so he can think in peace. Turning, Paul walks off from the table, leaving Iris in silence. It's here that Nurse Joy calls over the intercom for Iris to come pick up her Pokemon. Now frustrated, Iris is intent on showing Paul that he doesn't know what he's talking about. So she gathers her Pokeballs and heads just outside of the Pokemon Center, where she has plenty of space. With a deep breath and a wish of luck to herself, Iris readies the ball of her newest Mon. Dragonite, come out, she yells. However, Iris's optimism is replaced by a slight hint of fear when Dragonite shows nothing but aggression to the aspiring Dragon Master. No matter what she does, Dragonite will not not obey Iris's commands. It's to the point that the fear has been replaced with frustration, as Iris has a very childish outburst at Dragonite. However, her yelling is interrupted by a comment from an onlooker Iris didn't know she had. "It looks like you're having trouble there. Perhaps I can be of some help." And that is where we're going to leave things for right now. Now that you guys have seen this part, tell me, how do you feel about the battle that Paul had in Reversal Mountain? What is the connection between the black orb and the mirror that Giovanni was holding? And of course, who was that voice that was calling out to Iris, offering assistance with Dragonite? Let me know in the comments down below. And that's all we have for this episode today, guys. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I really hope you consider following me for future content. Now, if you really want to support me on other platforms, please hop on over to my Discord where you can meet some like-minded people and conversate with them and me. You can also follow me on Twitter, to where I post sometimes and give you behind-the-scenes content that I'm currently working on. And if you want to go a little bit further, consider becoming a YouTube channel member or a patron. For only $5 a month, you're going to get up to a week's early access to all of my videos, plus you'll get exclusive content as well. With all that being said, it's time to sign out the video the best way we know how, by thanking the sponsors, the YouTube channel members, and the patrons. For the YouTube channel members, we have Still There 123, Irua Karina, Pickle, ASTD. And for the patrons, we have Silver Heart Soul, Robert, Vegito Gaming 78, Andrew McCartney, Holosif, Julian Rodriguez, Ruben Watson, Lord Explosion Murder, Assassin 139, Flyer 943, Shadow Dragon, K McKnight, Kevin Atran, Drax, Truevolt, Dino King, Warren E. Taylor, Plus Ultraman, Megger, Mike Logan, Eddie, Kendall Green, Earth Dragon, John Larson, Forbidden Super, Dylan Nicholson, Gerald Smith, Normandy 1998, Chris Lackerman, Trainer Rad 164, Robert, Johnny, Brad 1, Ifosa Amid, Indigo Saturn 64, Kevin Malula, Chris Collins, Nicholas Onthank, Christian Anderson, Thomas Watson, Justin Ray, Gray Leo, Irving 14209, Nathan Perry, TC Com, Dylan, Wolfdog 31, and Mario Pikachu. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.